It's strange attending your sister's wedding when everyone thinks you're dead, even stranger when your family is the one who planned your funeral. That's the thought that echoed in my mind as I lined my lips with a deep crimson, the same shade my mother used to call too loud. I stared at myself in the mirror, holding my own gaze like I was daring the ghost in the reflection to flinch first. They told everyone I was dead, not metaphorically. Not in the cut off and we don't talk about her kind of way, I mean it literally. They announced my death, held a memorial service, even had a slideshow. And I wasn't invited. For the last 8 years, I've lived in the shadows. Quiet. Far away. Invisible. I built a life. A damn good one. But no matter how far I ran, I could still hear their silence chasing me. It wasn't until 3 weeks ago that I knew the full extent of their lie. A friend from childhood sent me a message out of nowhere. "Wait, aren't you dead?" At first, I laughed. Then I saw the wedding announcement. A perfectly staged engagement photo. My sister Victoria's smile, my parents standing proud behind her, and a comment beneath it. "This day would be perfect if Scarlett were here to see it. We miss her every day. She would have been 30 this year." They killed me in words, buried me in lies, but now I'm back, and they have no idea what's coming. I clipped on my earrings, smoothed the fabric of my emerald dress, and stood tall. Today, the family gathers again for joy, for celebration, for the perfect picture. I'll be in it. The ghost they tried to erase is about to walk through those church doors. Some people grow up with warmth in their homes. Casseroles on Sundays, bedtime stories, a mother's soft hands brushing the hair from their face. I didn't. In my house, love came with conditions. Approval was currency, and I was always bankrupt. My mother believed in discipline, not affection. She measured worth by silence and obedience. I failed at both. My father was a ghost even when he was in the room, always present, never there. And then there was her. Victoria. Golden child. Perfect grades. Perfect hair. Perfect lies. I was the opposite of everything they wanted. I asked questions. I spoke up when things felt wrong. I didn't smile when I didn't mean it. To them, that made me rebellious, disrespectful, shameful. They called me ungrateful for wanting to be heard, unstable for having feelings, unlovable for being me. By 16, I learned that silence wasn't just survival, it was expectation. But even then, I still believed maybe one day they'd see me. And then I met Mason. He was kind, gentle, funny in the way that didn't ask for anything in return. He came from a world completely different from ours. Different background, different upbringing, different everything. But he made me feel seen, valued, alive. When my mother found out, she didn't scream. That would have been too human. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're not one of us anymore." Then came the ultimatum. Choose us or him. I asked them if I could choose myself. That was the final betrayal. On my 18th birthday, I was given a gift, a black trash bag with my clothes, a bus ticket to nowhere, and a goodbye that never came. No hugs, no tears, just the sound of the front door closing and not locking behind me. I remember sitting at the edge of the street, holding that garbage bag, wondering if I really existed to them at all. No one chased me. No one called. Not then, not ever. I wasn't just unwanted. I was erased. But what they didn't know was that the girl they threw away would grow into the woman they'd one day regret creating. It had been almost a decade since I last heard their voices, and I was okay with that. No birthdays, no holidays, no guilt-tripping phone calls pretending the past didn't happen. I had made peace with the silence, until it spoke again. It was a Thursday afternoon. Ordinary. I was reviewing design plans in my office when an Instagram notification pinged. A name from the past, a girl I hadn't seen since high school. The message was short, almost hesitant. "Hey, is this really you? I thought you were dead." My hands froze. I reread the message 3 times. Dead? I thought maybe it was a joke, a mistake, a case of confused identity. So I replied cautiously, "Yeah, it's me. Why would you think that?" Her response came quickly. She said my parents told everyone I died in a car accident shortly after I left home. They even spoke about it at church gatherings. My mother, the same woman who couldn't look me in the eye when she kicked me out, had stood in front of a room full of people, choking back tears as she gave a testimony about losing her daughter to the dangers of rebellion. "Sometimes when you turn away from family, the world punishes you," she cried, for the daughter she killed with her own words. Now, as I stepped out of the taxi in front of the church where Victoria's wedding was about to begin, I felt strangely calm. The dead don't feel nervous after all. And today, I was about to rise from the grave they dug for me. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. There was no accident, no obituary, no grave, just a lie wrapped in sanctimony, presented as truth. I asked my old friend if she had any photos or proof. She sent me a picture someone posted from that church event. There was a slideshow, a table of candles, a framed photo of me at 16, the one where I still had braces and hope in my eyes. They didn't just cut me off. They didn't just pretend I never existed. They declared me dead to friends, to family, to God himself, apparently. They buried me in front of witnesses, and no one questioned it. No one came looking. Not one person wondered if the story was too neat, too clean, too convenient. I wasn't missing. I wasn't dead. I was simply inconvenient. So they wrote me out of the story like I was a bad chapter they didn't want to remember. But here's the thing about ghosts. They don't stay buried forever. Growing up in the Wallace household meant learning to be invisible while standing in plain sight. My mother, Eleanor, ran our home like a military operation. Beds made with hospital corners. Dinner at exactly 6:15 p.m. Church on Sundays, Wednesdays, and any other day she deemed necessary for our salvation. She had a way of looking at you, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line, that made you feel like you were being measured and found wanting, always wanting. "Scarlett," she'd say, my name sounding like an accusation in her mouth. "Why can't you just try to be more like your sister?" Victoria never had a hair out of place, never questioned, never rebelled. She played piano at church, volunteered at the shelter, and brought home report cards that went straight to the refrigerator door. When she spoke, adults leaned in. When she smiled, the room brightened. When she lied, and God did she lie, everyone believed her. "Mom, Scarlett was smoking behind the gym." "Mom, Scarlett stole money from your purse." "Mom, I saw Scarlett talking to that boy you said was trouble." Sometimes the accusations were true. Most times they weren't. It never mattered either way. My father, Robert, was a shadow that passed through our lives. He worked long hours at his accounting firm, came home, ate dinner in silence, and retreated to his study. The only time he seemed alive was when Victoria performed at recitals. He'd beam with pride, his normally stoic face transformed by joy that never appeared when he looked at me. Once, when I was 12, I found him alone in the kitchen late at night. He was staring out the window, a glass of something amber in his hand. "Dad?" I whispered. He turned, surprised to see me. For a moment, just a moment, his eyes softened. "You should be in bed, Scarlett." "I can't sleep." He nodded, like he understood. Then he said something I never forgot. "Sometimes, I can't either." It was the closest we ever came to a real conversation. The next morning, he was back to being a ghost. By the time I reached high school, I had accepted my role in the family, the disappointment, the problem, the one who would never measure up. I stopped trying to please them and started trying to survive them. I found refuge in art, sketching designs for houses I'd never live in, rooms filled with color and warmth my home never had. I dreamed of creating spaces where people felt safe, seen, welcome, everything I wasn't. Then Mason walked into my life during junior year. He transferred from a school across town, tall, with kind eyes and a smile that didn't expect anything in return. We were paired for a history project, and he actually listened when I spoke, not just nodded, but heard me. "You have good ideas," he said, the first time we studied together. Such a simple thing, but no one had ever told me that before. Mason came from a family that hugged each other goodbye. They ate dinner around a table where everyone talked at once, laughing, arguing, living out loud. The first time he invited me over, I sat stiff and silent, overwhelmed by the noise, the warmth, the casual affection. His mother touched my shoulder and asked if I wanted more pasta. His father made terrible jokes and didn't mind when people groaned. His little brothers bickered and made up within minutes. They weren't perfect. They were real. When Mason drove me home that night, I cried. I couldn't explain why, but he didn't ask me to. He just held my hand and let me feel whatever I was feeling. We fell in love slowly, quietly, in stolen moments between classes, in text messages that stretched late into the night, in dreams of a future where I could breathe. My mother found out on a Tuesday. Victoria saw us holding hands at the mall and ran straight home to report it. I came back to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table waiting. "He's not from a good family," she said, though she'd never met him. "He'll ruin your future." "He's the only person who makes me feel like I have one," I answered. The slap came fast, her palm against my cheek, the sting of her wedding ring catching my skin. "You will end this now," she hissed, "or you will no longer be welcome in this house." I looked at her, this woman who had given me life but never love, and made my choice. Then I guess I should start packing. 2 weeks later, on my 18th birthday, they made good on their promise. No cake, no cards, just a trash bag and a bus ticket. I left without looking back. But they weren't done with me yet. They needed me gone in every way, including memory. So they killed me. A tragic accident, a cautionary tale, a daughter lost to rebellion, the perfect ending to a story they controlled. Until now, the first night after I left home, I slept at the bus station. I had $237 to my name, birthday money I'd saved, tips from my weekend job at the local diner, and a 20 Mason pressed into my hand before I left. "Just until you get settled," he'd said, his eyes full of worry. We'd made plans to meet up once he graduated, to build something together. But life has a way of rewriting even the most carefully drafted blueprints. I rode the bus as far as my ticket would take me, 3 states away to a city where no one knew my name or my story. I found a women's shelter that first week, slept on a narrow cot surrounded by strangers with their own ghosts. The shelter had a 2-week limit. By day 10, I'd secured a job washing dishes at a 24-hour diner. The manager, Irene, had eyes that had seen too much and a heart that somehow hadn't hardened. She didn't ask questions when I couldn't provide references, just looked at my hands, soft, uncalloused, clearly never having done real work, and said, "You'll toughen up." She was right. By month 3, I was renting a room in a house with 4 other women, all of us working multiple jobs, all of us running from something or someone. I picked up a second job at a convenience store, working nights after my shifts at the diner. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Mason called the diner once. Irene took the message, handed me a slip of paper with his number. "Boyfriend?" she asked. I stared at the paper, at the familiar handwriting of the only person who'd ever truly seen me. Then I crumpled it up. "No," I said. "Just someone I used to know." I couldn't drag him into my mess. Couldn't ask him to wait while I figured out how to simply exist. So I let him go, the last piece of my old life falling away. The first year was about survival. The second was about stability. I enrolled in community college classes, studying interior design during the day while working nights. I lived on coffee and determination, falling asleep over textbooks, waking up with page imprints on my cheek. By year 3, I had my associate's degree and an internship at a small design firm. The owner, Camilla, saw something in my work, a perspective she called honest. I didn't tell her it came from knowing what a house feels like when it isn't a home. "You design spaces like they're shelters," she told me once, reviewing my portfolio. "Like every room needs to protect someone." I didn't correct her. Year 4 brought my bachelor's degree, a promotion, my own tiny apartment. Year 5, my first major client, and a salary that meant I could finally quit the diner. I sent Irene flowers and a card that said simply, "Thank you for seeing me." I built a life from nothing, created a career from scratch, made friends who knew me only as I was, not as I had been. I dated occasionally, never seriously, never letting anyone close enough to see the cracks in my foundation. I didn't look back, didn't Google my family's names, didn't drive by our old house when business trips took me near my hometown. I was building forward, not looking backward. Until that message appeared on my phone. "I thought you were dead." 4 words that shattered the carefully constructed wall between then and now. I spent that night in a spiral, searching online for any trace of the lie. It didn't take long to find. There it was, a memorial post on my mother's Facebook page from 8 years ago. A community fundraiser in my name for troubled youth. Comments offering condolences, prayers, memories of a girl they barely knew. Such a tragedy. She was so young. God works in mysterious ways. I found Victoria's social media next. No mention of a dead sister, no grief posts, just pictures of college graduation, European vacations, engagement announcements. As if I had never existed at all. I dug deeper. Found my father's business website with a family photo, just the 3 of them, smiling in coordinated outfits on a beach somewhere. The About section mentioned his only daughter, Victoria. Only daughter. I had been erased so completely it took my breath away. That night, I drank a bottle of wine and cried for the first time in years. Not for the family I'd lost. They were never really mine to begin with, but for the girl I'd been. The one who still, somewhere deep inside, had hoped they might have missed her, regretted her, remembered her. Instead, they had buried her, created a convenient tragedy to explain her absence, used her death to gather sympathy, to reinforce their narrative of being good parents who lost a child to the dangers of the world. They hadn't just rejected me, they had rewritten history. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and absolute clarity. I had spent 8 years becoming someone new, someone stronger, braver, more successful than they ever imagined I could be. I had built a life they knew nothing about. And now, I would make sure they knew exactly what they had thrown away. I was no longer the girl they could erase. I was the woman who would write her own ending to this story, starting with my sister's wedding. I arrived at the church an hour before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The parking lot was already half full, luxury cars lined up like shiny beetles, guests in pastel dresses and pressed suits filtering through the grand double doors. St. Augustine's hadn't changed in 8 years. Still imposing, still pristine, still the perfect backdrop for a Wallace family performance. I sat in my rental car, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching. From this distance, I could observe without being seen. A perfect metaphor for my entire childhood. My phone buzzed with a text from Mia, my assistant. "Designs for the Henderson project approved. Also, are you okay? You never take personal days." I smiled at her concern. In the 5 years she'd worked with me, I'd never mentioned my family. As far as she knew, I was an only child raised by a distant aunt who had since passed away. Another lie to cover another lie. "We're all hiding something, I suppose." "I'm fine," I texted back. "Just taking care of old business." I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror one last time. The emerald dress, designer, expensive, a silent statement about who I'd become. Hair styled in loose waves, makeup flawless but subtle. Diamond studs in my ears, real ones, bought with my own money. I looked successful, confident, alive, exactly how a ghost shouldn't look. I stepped out of the car, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the church. Each click of my heels on the pavement felt like a countdown. With every step, I reminded myself why I was here. Not for revenge, not exactly. For recognition, for truth, for the final word in a conversation that had been one-sided for too long. Inside the church vestibule, a young woman with a tablet was checking names against the guest list. I approached with a smile. "Name?" she asked without looking up. Scarlett Wallace. Her eyes remained on the tablet, finger scrolling. I don't see a Scarlett Wallace. That's strange, I said, voice steady. I'm the bride's sister. Now she looked up, confusion crossing her face. Victoria doesn't have a... There must be a mistake, I interrupted smoothly. Would you mind checking with the mother of the bride? Eleanor Wallace. She'll confirm. The girl hesitated, then nodded. Wait here, please. As she walked away, I felt eyes on me. A few guests in the vestibule were glancing over, curious about the holdup. I smiled politely, the picture of patience. Inside, my heart hammered against my ribs. 3 minutes passed. 5. Then the click of familiar heels on marble. My mother appeared from around the corner, following the confused wedding coordinator. She was thinner than I remembered, her blonde hair now streaked with elegant silver, her posture still ramrod straight. She wore a powder blue dress that probably cost more than my first month's rent after I left home. Her eyes found mine, and for a split second there was nothing. No recognition, no reaction. Just a polite, questioning look directed at a stranger. Then it hit her. The color drained from her face. Her steps faltered. Her perfectly composed expression cracked like thin ice. Hello, Mother, I said, voice carrying in the suddenly quiet space. It's been a while. She recovered quickly. She always did. A tight smile appeared on her lips as she closed the distance between us, lowering her voice to a harsh whisper. What are you doing here? I came for the wedding, I replied calmly. I was surprised not to receive an invitation. Must have been lost in the mail, or perhaps it was sent to my grave? Her eyes darted around, checking who might be watching, who might be listening, always concerned with appearances. You need to leave, she hissed. Now. Why? Afraid people might see a ghost? I smiled, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Imagine their confusion. The daughter you told everyone was dead, standing here in the flesh. What would the church ladies say? This is Victoria's day, she said, gripping my arm with surprising strength. Don't you dare ruin it. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Like you ruined my life? By telling everyone I was dead? You were dead to us, she replied, voice cold. You chose to leave. I chose not to be controlled. You chose to lie. We stared at each other, two strangers connected by blood and divided by everything else. I saw no remorse in her eyes, no shame, just calculation. How to remove the problem, how to maintain the facade, how to continue the performance without interruption. Mrs. Wallace? The wedding coordinator hovered nervously nearby. Is everything okay? The ceremony starts in 40 minutes. My mother's smile returned, plastic and perfect. Everything's fine, dear. Just a misunderstanding. She turned to me, voice honeyed for the benefit of anyone listening. I'm afraid you've been misinformed. Perhaps you have the wrong wedding. Before I could respond, a deep voice spoke from behind us. Eleanor, what's going on? My father appeared, distinguished in his tuxedo, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes moved from my mother to me, and I watched as recognition dawned. Slower than my mother's, but just as devastating. Scarlett? He whispered, the glass nearly slipping from his fingers. Hello, Dad, I said. Surprised to see me? He looked like he'd seen a ghost, which, in his mind, he had. His face paled, and for a moment I thought he might actually faint. This isn't possible, he murmured. You're dead? I finished for him. Funny story about that. Turns out I'm very much alive. Have been this whole time. My mother stepped between us, back to me, facing my father. Robert, handle this, she commanded. Get her out of here before Victoria sees. Before Victoria sees what? The voice froze all three of us. I looked past my parents to see my sister standing in the doorway to the bridal suite. She was a vision in white, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, dress probably worth more than my car. She looked exactly like the princess she'd always been treated as. Her eyes widened as she saw me, mouth falling open in shock. "Scarlett?" she whispered, clutching the doorframe for support. "Surprise," I said softly. "Congratulations on your wedding day." Victoria's face went through a series of emotions: shock, confusion, fear, and then something I couldn't quite read. She took a step forward, then stopped, looking to our parents for guidance. "This isn't happening," my mother said firmly. "Not today. Robert, call security." My father hesitated, looking between his wife and his supposedly dead daughter. "Wait," Victoria said suddenly. She straightened her shoulders, composed herself. "Let her stay." My mother whirled around. "What?" I said, "Let her stay." Victoria's voice was steady now, authoritative. "It's my wedding day, and if my sister wants to be here, she can be here." I hadn't expected that. In all my scenarios, all my rehearsed confrontations, I hadn't prepared for acceptance, especially not from Victoria. "She's not your sister anymore," my mother hissed. "She made her choice years ago." "And you told everyone she was dead," Victoria replied, her voice rising slightly. "Did you think I wouldn't find out eventually? That none of us would?" The silence that followed was deafening. Guests were openly staring now, whispers spreading through the vestibule like wildfire. My father finally spoke, his voice tired. "Perhaps we should take this somewhere private." "No," I said firmly. "I didn't come here to be hidden away again. I came to stop hiding." I turned to the small crowd that had gathered, watching the drama unfold. "My name is Scarlett Wallace. I'm Victoria's older sister. 8 years ago, my parents kicked me out and then told everyone I died in an accident. I'm here today because I'm tired of being erased." The whispers grew louder. My mother's face hardened into stone. My father looked at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. And Victoria walked straight to me, took my hand, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Welcome back from the dead, sis. We have a lot to talk about." Victoria led me to a small room off the main sanctuary, a place for brides to make last-minute adjustments before walking down the aisle. She closed the door behind us, shutting out the chorus of whispers that had erupted in the vestibule. For a moment, we just looked at each other. 8 years had changed her. She was still beautiful, still perfect in that effortless way that had always made me feel inadequate by comparison. But there was something different in her eyes, something harder, more knowing. "You look good for a corpse," she finally said, the corner of her mouth lifting in what might have been a smile. "You look good for a bride about to have a family meltdown on her wedding day," I replied. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "God, I forgot how direct you could be." She moved to a small table with a pitcher of water, poured 2 glasses with steady hands. "Why now, Scarlett? After all this time?" I accepted the water she offered, our fingers brushing briefly. "I found out about the memorial service, the fundraiser, the lie." "Ah," she nodded, taking a sip from her glass. "I wondered if that would ever reach you." "You knew?" The question came out more accusatory than I intended. "Not at first." Victoria set her glass down, smoothed her dress, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "I was away at college when you left. Mom and Dad told me you'd run away, that you didn't want to be found. I believed them." "And the memorial service? The tragic accident story? You believed that too?" She had the decency to look ashamed. "By then, I'd started to question things. The timing was too convenient. There was no body, no details, just a sudden announcement that you were gone. But I was still complicit. I didn't challenge them. I stood there at that service and accepted condolences for a sister I suspected was still alive." I wanted to hate her in that moment. It would have been easier than the complicated mess of emotions churning inside me. "Why?" I asked, the single word carrying the weight of years of abandonment. Victoria sank into a chair, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "Fear, at first. You know how they are, how she is. Then it became easier to go along with the story than to admit I'd been part of a lie. She looked up at me, eyes clear and direct. And part of me was angry at you for leaving without saying goodbye, for not reaching out, not even once. I was 18 and homeless, I said, the old hurt rising in my throat. You were their golden child with a full ride to Princeton. What was I supposed to say? Hey Vic, Mom and Dad kicked me out, can you spare some cash? You could have trusted me to help you. Like you helped me all those times you told Mom I was doing things I wasn't? All those times you watched me get punished for your lies? Victoria flinched. We were kids. We were never just kids in that house. We were competitors, and you always won. The door opened before she could respond. My mother entered, closing it firmly behind her. She'd composed herself, armor back in place, smile fixed on her face like it had been superglued there. The guests are being seated, she said to Victoria, ignoring me completely. Your father is keeping them entertained. We need to proceed with the ceremony. Victoria didn't move. We're not done talking. Yes, you are. My mother's voice was steel wrapped in silk. This is your wedding day, Victoria. Don't let her ruin it like she tried to ruin everything else. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Is that the story you tell yourself? That I was the problem? That I ruined things? My mother finally looked at me, her gaze cold. You were always difficult, always fighting, always questioning. We gave you everything, a good home, education, structure, and you threw it back in our faces. You gave me conditions, I corrected. Love with strings attached. Acceptance only if I became someone else. We wanted what was best for you. You wanted what was easiest for you. Victoria stood up, her wedding dress rustling. Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping. My mother turned to her, softening instantly. Darling, you have 200 guests waiting. James is probably wondering what's happening. Let's put this situation aside and focus on your special day. My special day already includes a massive lie, Victoria said quietly. Everyone out there thinks my sister is dead. How am I supposed to walk down that aisle knowing that? The same way you've managed for the past 8 years, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. By pretending it's true. Victoria looked at me, really looked at me for perhaps the first time since we were children. I'm sorry, she said. I should have looked for you, should have questioned them more, should have done something. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the Victoria I remembered. The perfect daughter, the rule follower, the one who never stepped out of line. This was someone new, someone who had perhaps grown up and grown a conscience. The door opened again. This time it was my father, looking more haggard than he had 10 minutes ago. People are asking questions, he said, his voice low. The Hendersons heard something about Scarlett being alive. The Patels are confused. Reverend Collins wants to know what's going on. My mother's composure slipped for just a moment, a flash of panic crossing her face before she regained control. Tell them there's been a misunderstanding. Some distant relative causing confusion. A distant relative who looks exactly like your supposedly dead daughter? I asked. My father looked at me then, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in my life. You've done well for yourself, he said quietly. I can tell. The simple observation, so unexpected, momentarily robbed me of my prepared anger. Yes, I managed. I have. Without any help from you, my mother added sharply. My father's gaze didn't waver from mine. What do you want, Scarlett? Why come back now? It was the question I'd been asking myself since I booked the flight. Why now? Why this way? What did I hope to accomplish? I want the truth, I said finally. I want you to admit what you did. To me, to everyone. I want you to stop living this lie. And ruin your sister's wedding day in the process? My mother countered. Is that your idea of justice? Victoria stepped between us. My wedding day was already built on a lie. I can't walk down that aisle knowing what I know now. She turned to our parents. You have to tell everyone the truth. Today, now." My mother's face hardened. "Absolutely not." "Then I will," Victoria said, her voice steady. "I'll tell everyone that my sister isn't dead, that you made up that story because you couldn't handle the fact that she left, that you've been lying to our family, our friends, our church for 8 years." I stared at her, stunned by this unexpected alliance. My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. "Eleanor," he said quietly to my mother, "it's over. We can't keep this up anymore." "We most certainly can," she hissed. "We are not going to humiliate ourselves in front of everyone we know because she decided to show up after 8 years of silence." "Mom," Victoria said, taking her hand, "this isn't about humiliation. It's about honesty, about family." "Family?" My mother jerked her hand away. "She walked away from this family. She chose to leave." "You gave me an ultimatum," I corrected. "Break up with Mason or get out. I was 18. You kicked me out with a trash bag of clothes and told me not to come back." "And then told everyone I was dead," I continued, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You held a memorial service. You collected donations in my name. You lied to everyone who knew me. That goes beyond kicking me out. That's erasing me." The room fell silent. Victoria looked horrified, her eyes darting between me and our parents. My father stared at the floor. And my mother stood straight-backed and unyielding, as always. "What do you want from us?" she finally asked. "Money? Recognition? Some public apology?" "I want you to look me in the eye and tell me why," I said. "Why you decided it was easier to kill me off than to admit I left. Why you couldn't just tell people the truth, that we had a falling out, that I moved away, that we weren't in contact. Why death was a better story than discord." My mother's perfect mask finally cracked. "Because failure wasn't an option," she whispered. "Because I couldn't bear for people to know that I had failed so completely as a mother that my own daughter would choose to leave and never look back."